Are you hungry? I know some of you are literally hungry right now. Dinner is right after Mass, and you're probably already thinking about where you're going to go for dinner. But are you hungry in a deeper way? I think that's what the church is kind of inviting us to consider by giving us this gospel today. Are we hungry for Jesus? Are we hungry for what the Lord wants to offer to us? Jesus fed 5,000 people in today's gospel, which is amazing. He was satisfying the hunger of their bellies. But that's not what drew them to Jesus. They didn't go to Jesus because they were hungry in that way. They were surrounding Jesus because they were hungry in a much deeper way. They were hungry to be in his presence. They were hungry for what he had to say, for what he was teaching. They were hungry to encounter God and what God had to say. That was the hunger that was driving them to Jesus. So as the church gives us this gospel today, the church is asking us, are we hungry in the same way that that crowd was hungry? I think it's interesting even considering this miracle that Jesus has performed. He's surrounded by this crowd, and as it gets into the evening and it's dinner time, there's not enough food. They're considering maybe we should just send off the people to go get food themselves. And Jesus is going to feed them. And this miracle is in all four of the Gospels. I believe it's the only miracle recorded in all four of them. It obviously packed quite a punch. This miracle probably did two things. I think it points backwards and it points forwards to two different things. It points backwards for Jesus' audience. Jesus' audience was mostly Jewish. When they saw Jesus take 5 barley loaves and then feed the crowds with it, they would have remembered something very important from the Old Testament. Elisha. We heard about Elisha in the first reading. We heard Elisha's miracle in the first reading. Elisha has 20 barley loaves, and he manages to feed 100 people with 20 barley loaves. Now, when you think of a loaf of bread, you probably think of a big loaf, golden, buttery, flaky, delicious. That's what you think about, probably. A barley loaf didn't look anything like that. A barley loaf was unleavened. It was about the size of a tortilla, but a little thicker, maybe more like a pita bread. So to feed 100 people with 20 of those, that's impressive. That's a miracle. And Elisha, in the Old Testament, he's a prophet, so he's speaking God's word to the people. He's kind of a conduit of God's voice. And he is also a miracle worker. So when Jesus' audience watched Jesus take barley loaves specifically, and then feed 5,000 people with it, a lot more, with a lot less, they would have definitely thought about Elisha. They would have made a connection. They would have said, wow, this is just like Elisha, but better. He did more with less. He must be a prophet like Elisha. He must have a power that's greater than Elisha's because of what he's done. So it's supposed to make it obvious to them that there's something greater than Elisha here. He's not just a good teacher. So it points backwards in that sense. But this miracle also points forwards for them to the Last Supper. Now, they don't know the Last Supper's coming yet. But we know, reading the Gospel of John, that this points forward to the Last Supper for a couple of reasons, for a couple of words that John uses in this Gospel. It says that when Jesus decides he's going to do this miracle, he has the people recline. It uses that word twice. It says he had them recline, and then they reclined. So we heard the word twice. There's only one other place in the entire Gospel of John that the word recline comes up. And it's at the Last Supper, when all of the disciples and Jesus were reclining. And there's another word that Jesus uses here that will probably sound somewhat familiar to you, even though it's in Greek. It says that Jesus took the loaves and he gave thanks. The word for thanks in Greek in this situation is Eucharistesos. Eucharistesos. It should sound like Eucharist to us because it is. It means giving thanks. Jesus gave thanks. And it's the same word that it's used in all the other Gospels at the Last Supper. This miracle is supposed to teach us something about the Eucharist at the Last Supper. What does it teach us about the Eucharist? Well, this miracle of bread feeds the stomach. It provides a sustenance. It gave them what they needed. It sustains them. It is their daily bread for that day. And it came in super abundance. Like 5 barley loaves, you could probably hold that in one hand. You don't need a basket for that. They multiplied the loaves, and when it came back, there were 12 wicker baskets full of these pita bread-sized things. That's a super abundance in this miracle of bread. So in the same way, the Eucharist is going to sustain us and be a superabundance. It sustains us in a spiritual way. It's our daily bread in a spiritual sense. It gives us the strength that we need every day to stay with the Lord, to walk with him. But it's not like Jesus just gives us enough to hold on. He gives us a superabundance of his grace when he gives us the Eucharist, if we're willing to open ourselves to it. And as we receive that superabundance of God's grace in the Eucharist, he's inviting us to share it with others. Just like when you have a superabundance of zucchini in your garden, you call up your neighbor and you give it away. You give away when you have a superabundance. So when the Lord gives us that much grace through the Eucharist, he's inviting us to share it with others, to share that life that we've received with others, to share the love that we've encountered of Jesus with others. So this miracle points backwards and it points forwards, and this miracle for us is supposed to help us hunger for the Lord more, to desire the gift of his Eucharist, which is our daily bread, it's our sustenance, and it is a superabundant gift of his grace. So today the church is inviting us to pray and to ask God for a deeper hunger for the Lord.